The announcement came right after Mom finished carving the Christmas ham. We were all seated around the mahogany dining table in what had been our family home for 23 years. The sprawling colonial where I'd grown up. Where Christmas mornings had once been magical. Where family dinners used to mean something other than strategic warfare. My brother Carlos set down his wine glass and cleared his throat like he was about to give a toast. Instead, he delivered what he clearly thought was a knockout punch. "Sophia, we need to talk about your living situation." I looked up from my plate where I'd been carefully cutting my ham into precise pieces, a nervous habit I'd developed during family gatherings. "What about it? This house belongs to the family now. Mom and Dad are getting older and they need the space for when they retire. You've been living here rent-free for 2 years and honestly, it's time you found your own place." Mom nodded solemnly. "We think it would be good for you, honey. You need to learn independence." Dad joined in. "Carlos has been looking at the real estate market, and this house has appreciated significantly. We could use the space more efficiently." I set down my fork. "Use the space more efficiently?" "Well," Carlos continued, clearly warming to his rehearsed speech, "Jessica and I are planning to have kids soon, and this house has that perfect nursery upstairs. Plus, with Dad's knee problems, they really should be living on one level. It just makes sense for everyone. Everyone except me, apparently. So you want me to move out so you can move in?" "It's not about wanting," Mom said in that careful tone she used when she was trying to sound reasonable. "It's about what's practical. You're 31, Sophia. Most people your age have their own homes. And Carlos is 34 with an actual career and a wife," Dad added. "He's in a better position to help us maintain this place." The subtext was clear. Carlos had the real job as a financial advisor, while I was just the daughter who worked in computers and couldn't even keep a boyfriend long enough to get married. In their minds, I was the family disappointment who'd been taking advantage of their generosity. What they didn't know was that I'd been paying all the property taxes on this house for the past 3 years. What they didn't know was that when Dad had his heart attack 2 years ago and the medical bills started piling up, I'd quietly covered them. What they didn't know was that their generous decision to let me live here rent-free was actually me letting them live in my house. "So when do I need to be out?" I asked calmly. "Well, we were thinking New Year's would be reasonable," Carlos said. "That gives you a week to find something." A week. To find a new place during the holidays in a market where decent rentals were scarce and expensive. It was a timeline designed to make me panic, to make me beg for more time, to put me in a position where I'd be grateful for whatever scraps of consideration they threw my way. Instead, I pulled out my phone. The silence around the table was immediate and uncomfortable. In our family, phone calls during dinner were considered rude, but I was apparently past worrying about their rules. "Who are you calling?" Mom asked. I held up one finger while the line connected. "Martinez Security Services, this is David." "David, this is Sophia Martinez. I need a team at the Oakwood Drive property immediately." "Yes, Ms. Martinez. What's the situation?" "Trespassing. I need the Martinez family escorted from the premises within the hour." There was a pause. "The Martinez family, ma'am?" "That's correct. Carlos Martinez, Richard Martinez, and Elena Martinez. They're currently in the main house and need to be removed." "Understood. We'll have a team there in 20 minutes." I hung up and set my phone beside my plate, then resumed cutting my ham. The silence stretched on for nearly a minute. Carlos was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mom looked confused and slightly offended. Dad was doing that thing where he blinked rapidly when he was trying to process information that didn't fit his worldview. "Sophia," Mom finally said, "what was that about?" "I called security to have you removed from my property." "Your property?" Carlos laughed, but it sounded forced. "Sophia, this house has been in the family for over 20 years. Just because you've been living here doesn't make it yours." "Actually, it does." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd brought with me, not because I'd planned for this exact conversation, but because I'd been carrying the documents around for weeks, trying to decide when and how to tell them the truth. I set the folder on the table and opened it to reveal the first page. A property deed with my name on it. "This house was sold to me 3 years ago when you defaulted on the mortgage." Dad's face went pale. "That's impossible. We never defaulted on anything." "Dad, you stopped making mortgage payments in March of 2021 when the medical bills started coming in." By December you were 6 months behind and facing foreclosure. But we caught up, Mom said weakly. We got back on track. You got back on track because I bought the house from the bank and let you continue living here. I've been making the mortgage payments for 3 years. I flipped to the next page showing the purchase agreement between the bank and Martinez Holdings LLC, my shell company. $847,000. That's what I paid to keep this house in the family. Literally. Carlos grabbed the papers and started reading frantically. This has to be fake. You don't have $847,000. You work in IT support or something. I work in cybersecurity consulting. My company has contracts with 17 Fortune 500 companies and 12 government agencies. Last year's revenue was $42 million. The number hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. 42 million? Dad whispered. That's gross revenue, not profit. But yes. That's impossible, Carlos said again, but his voice had lost its certainty. If you had that kind of money, why would you live here? Why would you drive that old Honda? Why would I dress like I shop at Target and eat lunch at food trucks and live like I'm barely scraping by? I'd been asking myself the same question for months. Why had I maintained the charade? Why had I let them think I was struggling when I could have bought and sold their entire social circle? Because I wanted to see who you really were, I said finally. I wanted to know if you valued me as a person or just as someone you thought you could control. The truth was more complicated than that, but it was as much as I was willing to share at Christmas dinner. My business had started almost by accident. I'd been working as a cybersecurity analyst for a mid-sized firm when I discovered a vulnerability in a client's system that could have cost them millions. Instead of just writing a report, I developed a comprehensive security protocol that not only fixed the immediate problem but prevented an entire class of attacks. The client was so impressed they asked if I could do the same thing for their other systems. Then they referred me to their parent company. Then to their business partners. Within 18 months, I had more work than I could handle and was hiring other specialists to help manage the load. The money came fast after that. Cybersecurity consulting isn't glamorous work, but it's essential. And companies pay premium rates for someone who can actually solve their problems instead of just identifying them. My team specialized in finding vulnerabilities before hackers did, and our track record was impeccable. But success in cybersecurity requires a certain level of invisibility. The more successful you are, the more you become a target. So I kept a low profile, drove an unremarkable car, lived modestly, and let most people, including my family, assume I was just getting by. The irony was that while I was building a multimillion-dollar business, my family was struggling with Dad's medical expenses and the economic uncertainty that followed. I could have helped them openly, but every time I tried to bring up their financial situation, they deflected or assured me they were handling it. So I helped secretly. I bought their house to prevent foreclosure, but I let them think they'd worked out a payment plan with the bank. I covered Dad's medical bills through a charity program that was actually just me writing checks. I made sure Mom's car passed inspection by having my mechanic fix whatever problems he found and billing it to a fictional warranty program. I told myself I was being generous. Looking back, I think I was being cowardly. It was easier to help from the shadows than to have the conversation about what I'd accomplished and how our family dynamics had changed. But sitting at that Christmas dinner table, listening to them plan to kick me out of my own house so Carlos could move in with his wife and their hypothetical future children, I realized the conversation was overdue. Sophia, Mom said carefully, if you own this house, why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? When you asked about my job and I said cybersecurity consulting and you said, that sounds nice, dear, and changed the subject. When Carlos made jokes about me being the family computer geek. When you assumed I was living here because I couldn't afford my own place. We didn't assume, Dad started. Dad, you literally just told me that most people my age have their own homes. You said Carlos was in a better position to maintain this place. You've spent 3 years thinking I was a financial burden instead of the person keeping you financially afloat. Carlos was still staring at the property deed like he could make it disappear through sheer willpower. Even if this is real, he said, you can't just kick us out. We live here. We have rights. Actually, you don't. You've been living here as my guests for 3 years. I never charged rent, never signed a lease agreement, never established any kind of formal tenancy. Legally, you're visitors who've overstayed their welcome. The doorbell rang. That would be security, I said, standing up. David's always very prompt. I walked to the front door and opened it to find 3 men in black uniforms with Martinez Security Services patches on their shoulders. David was a former police officer I'd hired to handle security for my business operations. His team provided protection for high-value clients and handled sensitive situations with discretion. Good evening, Ms. Martinez. You have a trespassing situation. 3 individuals in the dining room. They've been asked to leave and refused. Understood. Do you want them removed immediately, or would you prefer to give them time to collect their belongings? I considered this. Part of me wanted to watch them scramble to pack their things in 20 minutes, to feel the same panic they tried to impose on me with their New Year's deadline. But that would make me just as petty as they were. Give them until tomorrow evening. They can take whatever belongs to them personally, but the furniture and household items stay with the house. What about vehicles in the driveway? The BMW and the Mercedes can go. The Honda stays, it's mine. David nodded and walked toward the dining room. I followed, curious to see how my family would handle being evicted from their own Christmas dinner. The 3 security guards filled the doorway to the dining room, their presence immediately changing the energy in the room. Carlos started to stand up, his chest puffing out like he was going to challenge them, but Jessica grabbed his arm and pulled him back down. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, David said politely, I'm David Chin with Martinez Security Services. You're currently trespassing on private property and need to vacate the premises. This is ridiculous, Dad said, but his voice had none of its earlier authority. This is our home. Sir, according to the property records, this house is owned by Martinez Holdings LLC. Ms. Martinez is the authorized representative of that company and has requested your removal. Mom looked at me with something approaching desperation. Sophia, honey, surely we can work this out. It's Christmas. Mom, 30 minutes ago you were planning to kick me out by New Year's. What's changed? We didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You made assumptions about my life, my capabilities, my value to this family. And based on those assumptions, you decided I was disposable. Carlos finally found his voice again. Fine. Let's say you do own this house. Let's say you do have some kind of business. That doesn't give you the right to destroy our family. I'm not destroying anything, Carlos. I'm establishing boundaries. You wanted me out of this house, so I'm granting your wish. The only difference is that you're the ones leaving. Where are we supposed to go? The same place you expected me to go. Figure it out. David stepped forward. You have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to remove your personal belongings. After that, anything remaining on the property will be considered abandoned. The family sat in stunned silence as the security team left. I remained standing, looking down at the 3 people who'd raised me, who'd shaped my understanding of family loyalty and love, who'd just demonstrated that their version of both was entirely conditional. Sophia, Dad said quietly, I think we need to have a longer conversation about all this. I think that conversation is about 3 years overdue. I walked upstairs to my bedroom in my house, and started packing. Not because I was leaving, but because I wanted to sort through my belongings and decide what belonged in my old life and what belonged in whatever came next. From my window, I could see Carlos and Jessica loading suitcases into their BMW. Mom and Dad were moving more slowly, carrying boxes to the Mercedes with the careful movements of people who'd suddenly aged a decade in one evening. By morning they were gone. The house felt different without them. Not empty exactly, but cleaner somehow. Like a weight had been lifted. I spent the day walking through rooms that had always been ours, and were now definitively mine, trying to decide what I wanted to keep and what needed to change. The call came that evening. Sophia, we're staying at Carlos's apartment for now, but we need to talk. I'm listening. I've been thinking about what you said last night. About us not asking, not knowing about your life. And I think you're right. It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from Mom it was close. Go on. Your father and I were proud of you. We're proud of what you've accomplished. We didn't realize how much you'd accomplished. Why didn't you realize it? There was a long pause. Because we were so focused on what we thought success should look like that we couldn't see what your success actually looked like. That was closer to an apology. Mom, I need you to understand something. I didn't reveal all this to hurt you or to show off. I did it because I was tired of being treated like the family failure when I've actually been the one keeping this family financially stable for years. The medical bills, she said quietly. And the house payments. That was you. All of it. Why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to talk about money or offer help, you shut me down. You told me not to worry about it, that you had everything under control. You made it clear that my input wasn't wanted. We were trying to protect you. From what? From knowing that your family needed help? From having the opportunity to actually contribute something meaningful. Another long pause. We were wrong, she said finally. We were wrong about a lot of things. Yes, you were. What happens now? It was a good question. I'd spent so much energy on the revelation and the confrontation that I hadn't really thought through what came after. Now we figure out what kind of relationship we actually want to have. One based on who we really are instead of who we think we're supposed to be. And the house. The house is mine. It's been mine for 3 years. If you want to live here, we can discuss terms. Real terms with real conversations about expectations and boundaries. We'd like that. Then we'll talk. But not today. Today, I'm going to enjoy having my house to myself for the first time in 3 years. Over the next few weeks, we did talk. Long, difficult conversations about assumptions and expectations, about money and success and what it means to be family. Carlos struggled the most with the new reality. His identity as the successful son was tied up in being financially superior to his younger sister. Learning that I'd been subsidizing the family lifestyle while he was lecturing me about fiscal responsibility was a blow his ego couldn't easily absorb. But we worked through it, fully. With the help of a family therapist who specialized in wealth-related conflicts. Because apparently my cybersecurity business wasn't the only family secret. It turned out that having money changed everything about how people related to each other, and we all needed to learn new rules for this new reality. 6 months later, Mom and Dad moved back into the house. Not as owners but as tenants paying market rent. It was their idea actually. Dad said he needed to feel like he was contributing rather than just accepting charity. I respected that. Carlos and Jessica bought their own place. A smaller house than they'd originally wanted, but one they could actually afford on Carlos's salary. He started referring clients to my cybersecurity firm, and I started using his financial planning services for my business accounts. It was a professional relationship that gradually rebuilt into a personal one. The Christmas dinner that ended with security guards escorting my family from their own home became the story we told at future Christmas dinners. The year everything changed, the year we finally started being honest with each other, the year we learned that love without respect isn't really love at all. And every Christmas since then, when we sit around that same mahogany table in what is now unambiguously my house, we remember that the best gifts aren't the ones you unwrap. They're the truths you finally decide to share.